Guten Abend allerseits. Welcome to Tom Plays Europa Universalis 4 for absolute beginners. Which kind of begs the question, why EU4 and not EU5, seeing as EU5's out? Partly because I still think it's a really good game. Partly because I'm actually enjoying the fact that they've stopped messing with it finally. And also partly because we haven't done Austria yet, and I've been dying to do Austria. So, single player, Austria. Defaults. Austria would be a really weird choice for your first time playing. They're very different to every other country in the game, pretty much, because they're primarily diplomatic. But we're going to try and do it as a beginner's guide anyway. So it starts off, it tells you something about the Empire of Austria in 1444, ruled by the Habsburgs. And this is actually more important than usual, because as well as telling us that we are the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, it also tells us that we have a legitimate claim to the kingdoms of Hungary and Bohemia, which we're going to want to do something about. Religion, we are Catholic. That's going to be a big deal because there's basically going to be a civil war in the Holy Roman Empire over it. I'm planning to keep Austria Catholic and, as far as possible, keep the Holy Roman Empire Catholic as well. Government, not that important, except that Christian royal marriages can result in personal unions, which we're probably, hopefully, going to see a lot of. And the environment is the Holy Roman Empire. Very, very important. We have no DLCs loaded. Nothing against the DLCs. They're pretty good. But EU4 is unusually, for a Paradox game, still good with no DLCs. And it does make the game simpler. So it will change the game, depending what DLCs you've got loaded. But this is the no DLC version. Okay. So, we start off. We move the map by moving the mouse to the edge of the screen. There are a number of things we can select. And we are the white areas. So we have a number of provinces in Austria. One big difference you've probably noticed from the Austria of today is that we are not landlocked. We actually do have some access to the Gulf of Venice. We also have a couple of provinces which aren't directly connected to us over here. Sundgau and Breisgau. It's not going to be as much of a problem as it would normally be because we are primarily diplomatic, so we can just make discussions with the various countries to get access if we need it. We have a bunch of overlays which are all going to be important in their own way, so just going to go through those to start with. So up at the top right we have the time. Got 5 speeds we can play the game at. We're probably going to have to go pretty slow as Austria. So this may be testing for people's patience, but we'll see. At the moment the game is paused and it's going to stay that way for this session because we have so much to do before we unpause it. We've got the date. We start the game on the 11th of November 1444 and we'll be playing through to, I think, the 1st of January 1821. So we've got a little less than 400 years to make Austria as powerful as we can. There's some important information here, but it's not vital right now. So we'll probably come back to that, but it's always worth keeping an eye on to give you an idea of what's going on in the game. Down here we'll get a lot of information which is probably going to be irrelevant, but the maps are actually quite important. We're going to need the maps. I think by default you start with 4 and we're going to have to add 2, which will be vital. There's a terrain by default, which I'm not going to use at all. It's worth being aware of if you want to be a strategy master, because it does affect things, but as this is a beginner's guide I'm going to ignore terrain. Political is the map that we're going to spend most of the game on. It shows us the various countries. Trade, not as important for Austria. We will cover it though. There are various trade nodes, and we will look into that, but it's not something we're going to use a lot of as Austria. And diplomatic, which arguably should be vitally important for Austria, but we can actually manage quite well without a diplomatic map, so I may not actually use it. The two maps that we absolutely have to add, I will cover just after we've done some of the more basic things. So we'll come back to this. Up here we have a lot of information. Probably the most vital part of this is the alerts that appear in the top left corner. These are things that the game thinks you need to be aware of and probably need to deal with. So we're actually going to cover these first. Okay, so let's start from the left. We have too few rivals. So if we click on this, left click, this is a very important concept in EU4. Basically, we are expected to declare a certain number of nations to be our rivals. These, as Austria, these will usually be enemies. They can be people who we consider to be competitors and not necessarily enemies, but as Austria, they're mostly going to be enemies. So normally, with a lot of countries, you would match them up to the enemies you start with, which change from game to game. We can normally rely on the Ottomans to be our enemies, but England and Poland especially is quite unusual. We've actually been very unlucky here, so that's life. A lot of the time you can ally Poland as Austria. It is definitely worth doing, and I would highly recommend it if you can. If you can't ally Poland, you want to ally Burgundy. If you can't ally either of those, if they both start as your enemy, I'm a bit reluctant to say this, but if it's your first time playing Austria, I would recommend honestly restarting. You've been very unlucky if both Burgundy and Poland hate you. So we've started with Poland hating us, which is pretty unlucky to start with. So if we click on rivals, Burgundy actually likes us. So this is salvageable, this is fine, so we can go with that. So as our rivals, unusually, I would actually suggest we pick Venice. The reason I want to pick Venice is because they're not that powerful. Even at the start of the game, their army is only slightly stronger than ours, and we are going to massively improve ours. They already hate us, they always hate us. Their navy is infinitely more powerful than ours, but that's fine. The navy is really not that important to Austria. So, worth noting is that as a general rule in EU4, red is bad, green is good, yellow is neutral. So at the moment, Venice is looking like a terrible option, but in actual fact, it's only slightly red. So we're going to select Venice as an enemy, as a rival, sorry. We may as well go with the Ottomans. There's some value in having a long-term enemy, and they already have selected us as their rivals, which is why they're in enemies. And I suppose, to be fair, we may as well go with Poland. There's an argument that we could try to bring them round and ally them, but I'm just going to go with it. So that's the first alert dealt with. It's worth noting that this is the diplomacy screen that we've got here, going to be very, very important to us. And if we close it, we could also reopen it by clicking on this nice big Austria shield, which allows us to select as an option. It's the one with the dove. Tends to open on whichever screen you had open last. So that's fine. Okay, so our next alert is you have a free advisor slot. So this takes us to the court screen. There we can see our current ruler. So it doesn't really cover it like this, but if you read the blurb at the start, Emperor Friedrich is almost acting as a regent, but it doesn't treat him as a regent, it treats him as the actual ruler. But technically it's Ladislaus that everyone is loyal to, or should be loyal to, by which I mean Bohemia and Hungary. Friedrich has stepped in, essentially. But to all intents and purposes, he's the actual emperor. We're not in a region. So you can see their ages, which is quite important, because dying without an heir can be disastrous. So at the moment, we're fine. Emperor Friedrich isn't married, but he does have Ladislaus as his officially designated heir. He also has, we're not going to look into these too much, but they do take an effect. He also has his own trait, which get assigned randomly. He is careful, which is a good thing. We're lucky to have that. However, the bit we're actually looking at here is advisors. Now, this actually comes into something else in the top left, which is monarch points, or monarch power. These are very important in this game. We have 3 types: administrative, diplomatic, and military. We want as much of this as possible. Every month, when the clock goes over to a new month, we get this amount of each. Now, this is affected by a few things. The base value is 3, and we also get some based on the monarch. So the monarch can add anything from 0 to 6 in each one. So Emperor Friedrich is not great, to be honest, but he is good at diplomatic. He's got a 5 in diplomacy, but he's bad at everything else. Ladislaus is a bit more even, but he's still not fantastic. I think if you add these up, you've got 8 in both cases out of a possible 18. So average, very slightly below average. You can see, though, that because of our, let's see, I think national focus, we've got a +2 here. So we're getting 7 administrative, 7 diplomatic, because Friedrich's very good at diplomatic, but we're not getting much military power, which is bad. We can improve this with advisors. Before we do look at advisors, though, we also need to look at the financial screen, the economy screen, and see what we can afford. So at the moment, we are gaining 3.52 ducats every month. If we look at our advisors, we can see that even the cheapest advisor is going to cost us 1 ducat per month. So we can actually afford to have all 3 slots filled. However, we can't afford to have all 3 slots filled with the best advisors, which is a bit of a problem. Not a huge problem. We're in a better position than most people, and actually we're going to be in a position to make a lot more money, so we can afford to actually go into negative on money. So these are the various advisors we can select, as well as the plus to monarch points. Each advisor comes with a special ability. So the only one we can afford right now is Wilhelm, who's got yearly inflation reduction. Very valuable for Austria, because our inflation is going up at the moment, and it's going to go up even further as time goes on. However, normally for most countries I would say administrative powers are most important, followed by military, and diplomatic doesn't matter. That isn't the case for Austria. Diplomatic is vital. Now if we look at our diplomatic options, normally an advisor will cost at the moment 1 ducat for a +1, 4 ducats for a +2, and something insane for a +3. However, Austria always starts with this guy, Ulrich, and he has a +2 for only 2 ducats. He's actually cheaper. This can happen through various events. I would thoroughly recommend that we get this guy. His special ability basically allows us to make friends, which is good for us. We're going to need that in a bigger way as Austria. Military, we probably want to stick with a +1. There are no cheaper options. A few options, but morale of armies at the start of the game is really good to have. There's another one called discipline, which is good throughout the game. If either of these are an option, we should go for them. So let's go for this guy. And then here we have a choice. It's not a choice we're going to make straight away, but we do have an amazingly cheap +3 administrative. Now, if we go for him, we're really going to struggle financially. Whereas we could just go for the standard +1 guy. This is kind of a risk. I've gone either way with this. At the moment, we can't afford either of them. I'm possibly leaning towards the less risky option. But that's for next session anyway. So this alert hasn't gone away. Not all of them do, because we're still missing an advisor. But at the moment, we're still getting positive money. The minute we fill this slot, we will probably have negative money. But that's just something we're going to have to put up with. Okay, our next alert is going to be very important to us. This is a list. It's not something... Oh, if you click on it, you do go to the diplomacy screen. Fair enough. But most of the time, we're just going to hover over this. This is a list of countries that currently don't have an heir. Vitally important for Austria. I think Austria has an advantage in terms of marrying people. And what can basically happen with Christian countries is if you have a royal marriage with someone and they don't have an heir, if their current ruler dies, we could get their country for free. We get what they call a personal union. It doesn't help us financially, but it helps us in war, which is vitally important. We have a potential, historically, to get a personal union over Bohemia, Hungary, I think Burgundy, and Milan. Burgundy we may well have to fight for. Milan we will definitely have to fight for. Hungary and Bohemia we're also going to have to fight for. All four of those will happen. The start screen only tells you about Bohemia and Hungary. Burgundy historically is something that did go to someone else. I think it was actually Austria. And we do have an advantage if we have a royal marriage with them. We might... We'll cover that when it comes to it, but when Burgundy happens, we could end up fighting with Burgundy on our side, or we could end up fighting against someone else who wants Burgundy, and they have them on their side. If we are allied to them, if we have a royal marriage, we've got a much better chance of having Burgundy on our side in that fight, which will be a huge advantage, and make it much easier for us to win. That is going to happen. The fact that we're probably going to ally Burgundy is going to give us a big plus there. But in any case, this screen, very important. You can actually see that Poland is on here. It's less important if a ruler is young. They've got a good chance of producing an heir. Poland's on here, Milan's on here, 59 years or 52 years. They would normally be very good options. But we probably don't have good enough relations with Poland for a royal marriage. We will check that. And I think there's a historical event which will prevent that from helping us at the moment. There are a few historical events at the beginning, which makes this less valuable than it will be later on. So I'm not as worried about this screen as I will be later, but I'm sort of talking about it because later we're going to be checking this a lot when we do diplomacy. But for now, we're just leaving that be. And the final alert is we can summon a diet. This is quite useful. It's almost like a parliament, if we just click on it. So this takes us to the estates screen. The estates are basically powerful groups in our country that we're kind of sharing power with. We have the clergy, who are our religious folk, the church, Catholic Church in this case. We've got the nobility. So we're just coming out of a period of history in which the king was kind of the first among nobles. I think actually we're an archduke. So even more so, we're listed as an emperor, but the actual Austria itself is an archduchy. So yeah, these guys are very powerful, and you know we don't want to upset them too much. And there's also the burghers. The burghers are essentially merchants, artisans. They are not very powerful to start with, but they will become more powerful as time goes on. As we move towards the Renaissance, essentially the burghers become more powerful and the nobility become less. So these are the three people who we need to maintain a balance of power with, but also assert our authority over. You can see our relative power with this pie chart. It's a rough idea. It's who controls the land. We control 30% of the land right now. The nobility control 40%. So they're kind of more powerful than us. The clergy control 20% and the burghers control 10%. Nice, simple, round numbers. We need to increase this as much as we can. The most direct way to increase it is this button here, Seize Land. That's a very funny quirk of the game as it stands, that everyone starts off very loyal. They are 50% loyal in all cases. Seizing land reduces loyalty by 20%. We are in danger of rebellions if any estate drops below 30, but because everyone starts on 50, for every nation it's a good idea just to start by seizing land. We're going to do this multiple times. Sometimes we'll have a rebellion, sometimes we won't, but any time when all 3 estates are at 50% loyalty or above, seize the land. Takes them down to 30. Our crown land, the land we control, is now up to 35, and they have all gone down a bit. They don't like it. The loyalty will gradually recover. It'll go to the equilibrium level, which is different for each estate. 40.3 in this case. 44.60. Yeah, they're all a bit different, so it will start going up. You must do that right at the start because it goes towards the equilibrium levels, so they will drop if they're above that level. You can also sale of titles, which is the opposite to seizing land. I have never done this. I'm not sure why you would do this. I guess it gives you money, or maybe deals with the loyalty problems, but ideally I wouldn't do this at all. We want to be seizing land when we can, but we want to let the loyalty recover and ideally have it at 50 or above, or at least close. Some people would disagree with that. For the more advanced games, you're going to seize and not worry about loyalty, but as a beginner it's less dangerous to try and keep these guys roughly loyal. And we do get a lot of penalties if you fall below 30, as well as a rebellion. Okay, Summon the Diet is literally like calling a parliament. They're all going to give us ideas as to what they want us to do. This is usually a good thing. If you fulfill their ideas, they will gain a lot of loyalty. They'll gain some anyway. It does mention influence. As Austria, we don't need to worry about influence. I've never had it cause a problem. We're fine. But let's summon the Diet, and they will propose their own idea for what they want us to do. The clergy would like the Pope to like us better. That's a good idea. If a Pope dislikes us too much, we're in danger of being excommunicated, which would be terrible, especially for Austria. Our legitimacy as Holy Roman Emperor partly comes from the Pope. We want to be solidly best buds with the Pope. We don't want to ally them because they're not powerful enough, but we do want to make friends with them, so we're probably going to want to do this whether the clergy want it or not, so that's almost a free thing. Depletion of manpower reserves. I would avoid this if possible. We will cover manpower. It is a good idea to get your manpower as high as you can, but if we are forced to go to war for some reason, we automatically fail this and the nobility don't like it, and Austria, we can be forced to go to war very easily. So I would almost never do this as Austria. And the burghers, they don't like how much money we've got. It's an option. Usually this is quite dangerous though, because they are quite demanding for this. It's going to be hard for us to get 480 ducats, and we have so much to do that we're, if anything, probably going to go into debt near the start of the game. So in this case, we definitely want to go with the clergy. Okay, so we just want to get the papal state to like us. This is our specialty as Austria, so that's absolutely fine. That's great. So this is another one which can be reached by the shield. We've seen a few of these now. Court, diplomatic, economy, and I think estates we have all seen. We will cover the others, but I want to go through the rest of this. So up here we've got the treasury. That's just how much money we've got and how much we're expecting to get. We will obviously want as much money as we can get, but with Austria we're going to have to take some risks. Manpower. So this is the thing the nobility was fretting about. Again, like money, we want this as high as possible. What basically happens is, in war, people get killed and they will be replaced from this pool. If we run out, then when our armies get damaged, they're not going to recover and we're going to really struggle. So we want this as high as we can. However, if it gets to the maximum, we're effectively wasting manpower every month. So if we get to the maximum or near the maximum, we want to start improving our armies. Making our armies bigger costs manpower. You can't do it without. So yeah, we will be keeping an eye on this. In a sense, that's almost the same for money, because generally the more money you have, the more random events cost. So we often don't want to accumulate money too much either. It's better to spend it, at least in the early game, on things which will make us more money later. So kind of similar for manpower. Sailors are like manpower for ships, but as Austria, ships are not that important. So we're not going to care much about this. It's usually going to be at the maximum, and we're not going to worry about it. Stability, very important. This only goes from -3 to +3. So a change in stability is massive. Ideally, when we can afford it, I would like to keep this at least +1. Random events can make it go up and down, but we can actually spend administrative power to make it higher ourselves. We can't really afford to do it now, so at this point we're probably going to leave it at +0. But as we get on into the game, I'm going to want to standardise on +1 because it does bring important benefits to everything. And even later in the game, I might even try and standardise on +2, which is expensive, but it does bring a lot of benefits and helps us weather any shocks that might come. Corruption. This mostly affects money. It can go up and down with events. We can fight it by allocating some of our money to fight it. Mostly when things are normal, as in when we don't have wars going on or the immediate aftermath of wars, we want it to be constantly going slightly down, but we don't care if we have some. We'll cover that when we deal with it. It's not something to be too worried about. Prestige. As Austria, this is so important. I mean, it's important to every country, but with Austria we get so many benefits from both prestige and legitimacy. Prestige is basically how other nations see us. You can see here that we already have a bunch of benefits from our +26 prestige. That's quite high as a start, but you can also see near the top of the black box that it's going down every year. That's typical for prestige. It often does go down. We will raise it through our actions. We are likely to keep it quite high as Austria, and we want to keep it high. So we're going to do everything we can to bring this up. Legitimacy is the same, but it's easier to keep it high. We start at 100, which is the highest it can be. Same for prestige. I think they can go from 100 to -100, prestige and legitimacy. We want them both high, but legitimacy is easier to keep. You can see it's actually going up every year. The benefits aren't as extreme. One of the benefits of prestige is actually raising our legitimacy every month. So yeah, but however, for Austria, it's actually more important than usual. Both of these are vital. We want them as close to 100 as we can. We really do. Power projection, not as important. It does bring benefits, but as Austria, honestly, we're going to be fighting and hopefully winning so many wars that our power projection is going to be very high, just by default. We do want to keep it high if we can, but it's not going to be a problem for us. It's effectively how powerful we're seen as and how much our reach extends beyond our borders. Okay, we've already mentioned administrative power, diplomatic power and military power. Generally speaking, you can only have about 1,000 of these. It does vary a bit. It says 999. That varies. You never want to get to the point where you're wasting this though. We gain this every month. We never want to waste these. They're very important because we can do a lot with them. Okay, we have 4 types of people who will work for us. Merchants, we've got 2. They're already assigned. They're fine. We'll leave them as they are. We don't need to worry about them right now. Colonists, we will probably never have. We don't care about them. Diplomats are vital. We are going to want to increase our number of those, and we never want them to be idle. At the moment, 3 of them are idle. You can see what they're doing over here. We're going to be rectifying that. As Austria, we are going to be on a diplomatic mission all the time. Missionaries only matter when we have any places which aren't Catholic. We will pull up the faith map next and we'll be able to see that we're entirely Catholic. So we can't use them yet, but we will want them. Age of Discovery, honestly, we can ignore this. It's kind of important, but as a beginner, we're not going to care that much. It will affect things a bit in the game, but we're going to deal with them as they come. Okay, maps. So we've looked at the basic maps, so there are 2 more maps that we absolutely need. You may start with them, but just in case you don't, I've made sure I start with what used to be the 4 defaults. And we're going to make the 2 more that we need. So we click on one of the empty ones. Add another map mode. We want Imperial. So this is the Imperial map. It shows us the Holy Roman Empire. So this is largely what ended up becoming Germany, with the exception that it used to include some Italian states as well. And it also used to include Austria and Switzerland. There are a few different colours. Oh, good grief, yeah, we should probably get into this. But let's make the faith map first, because the Holy Roman Empire is quite complex and very important. So click on another empty slot, add another map mode. I think it's called, yeah, just religious. So you can see that almost everything is Catholic at the moment. There are some Orthodox nations to the east, but they're not in the Holy Roman Empire yet. And there are some Muslim nations, mostly Sunni. Got some Coptic Christians down here, but for all intents and purposes, the nations we're dealing with are almost all Catholic, except some of Bohemia is Hussite, which is almost like an early Protestant religion. So it's like an early version of the Reformation that we're going to have to deal with soon. I just want to deal with a couple of last things that are common to every nation. We have 2 armies on the board. You can sort of see these have got a little Austria flag. They're showing in green because they're ours. You can just click on them and they'll give you details of the army. We will probably cover this more next time, but there are basically 3 types of troop we can have: infantry, cavalry and artillery. We don't have artillery yet. You can select things by clicking on them, or more easily by just dragging across. We're going to worry more about those next time, because we don't need to use the armies just yet. We also have a couple of navies. One of them has only 1 ship. This is our trade fleet, if you can call 1 ship a fleet. There are 4 types of ship, which we might get a better look at if we click at the other navy. Heavy ships, light ships, galleys and transports. Transport ships, if we start with those, they basically move our armies about. So we've effectively got 6 transport ships. They can each move 1,000 people, so we don't currently have enough to transport our army. These are quite useful. They'll allow us to get our armies to islands, and there are quite a few islands in the Mediterranean. However, they're not that important right now. Galleys. Okay, so these are kind of light military ships. There are 2 essentially military ships, galleys and heavy ships. So the light ships are more trade ships. They can do military stuff, but they're usually used for something else. So these effectively are our less expensive military ships. The reason we use them is they have an advantage in inland seas, and as you can see as Austria, our entire world almost is inland seas at the moment. So we are basically going to be filling our navy with these. We might want heavy ships later, but almost as a clue, we haven't been given any, because to start with, we'll just go with galleys. Because everything in the Mediterranean, all of this, the Black Sea is inland seas until we get past the Pillars of Hercules and head out into the Atlantic, which we're just not going to do for quite some time. So we're not very interested in our navy. It's small. One of our enemies is Venice, another enemy is the Ottomans. Both of them are going to absolutely destroy us. But our trade fleet is actually quite important. We want to actually send them doing something. So with no DLC, the only mission available, you tend to give them missions, is protect trade. And we only have one option, which is the Venice trade node. That's actually going to lose us money. I do question whether it's even sending out, but I'm going to hope that it's going to increase over time. So just to demonstrate, I'm going to send them out on a trade mission. The one other important thing we need to do, this is all automated, they're going to try to protect our ships in the Venice trade node and our trade, is we want to select this button, go to port during war. This will mean that when we start a war, they will hopefully immediately head back to Trieste and not get absolutely massacred by the Venetian fleet. If I remember, I will send them there manually before I start a war with Venice. But that's all we really want to do with the navy. We'll cover moving troops around and buying troops next time, I think, because we really need to discuss diplomacy and the Holy Roman Empire. Okay, so diplomacy. If we right click on our own nation, we get the diplomacy screen, which we've seen a few times already. An important part of our diplomacy is diplomatic relations, of which we currently have none. We are allowed up to 5. We absolutely want to fill this up. And we may want to go above it as Austria, which normally you don't want to do because it gives you a penalty. Essentially, the monarch points we get every month for diplomatic power, for every relationship above 5 that we have, we're going to lose 1 diplomatic power per month. So that is going to add up. It's going to make a big difference. It's not something we want, but it may be worth it for the chance at a personal union, or just for having enough allies for wars. So to start with, if you remember, we could get there by right-clicking on Austria. If we right-click on Burgundy, which is over here, the nice burgundy colour, we get a whole bunch of things we can do with Burgundy. I'm just going to open them out so we can see them. But the absolute first thing we want to do before selecting the clock is we want to offer Burgundy an alliance. This is, I think, worth doing as Austria if you can. A lot of the time Burgundy will hate you and you won't be able to do it. But you can see here we've got a tick, so it tells us in advance that it will work, and it actually tells us why. Because we don't have Poland, we absolutely need this. Poland and Burgundy, even though they're a bit of a problem for us, at the start of the game they will give us the power we need to assert our rule over Bohemia and Hungary, and potentially Milan, but especially Bohemia and Hungary. Burgundy have no reason not to help us with this, so hopefully they will actually join in with that. So you can see we've filled up one of our diplomatic relations. We will also later get a royal marriage with them. You can see on our diplomatic relations at the moment we've got alliance. We can't do that immediately. You can't immediately make two things with them. We've recently sent a diplomat, so we can't send another. That's fine. and one of our diplomats is currently busy returning from Burgundy. If we look at Poland, now if you got the chance, I would go for Poland first. They're a very useful ally. They're a very bad enemy. This is going to disadvantages, and usually you can ally them right at the start of the game. If you leave it and set the clock going, they will max out their alliances and you may not be able to. So we're going to have a much harder game with Poland. We can't even marry them because they're our rivals. They don't like us. So that's a shame because they don't currently have an heir. But I don't think it would have mattered anyway. I think they're going to go with Jagiellons, I think. So we're just going to have to deal with that. But Poland could have been very useful. Right. The second thing I'd definitely recommend doing is marrying Castile. We're going to ally them as well. They're a powerful ally. They will come in very useful against France, who we will end up enemies with. So we're going to enter into a royal marriage. With Austria, historically, they did end up with a personal union over Castile. So effectively that is when they recognise our king as being their king, and we effectively get the country for free. So we're starting the ball rolling with a royal marriage. We will end up allying them as well, and we'll probably keep that going throughout the game. At some point, France will make us their rival, and at that point we may well get an event in which Castile makes our heir their heir. It doesn't always work out very well because they have another event in which they get arrogant and it sometimes messes that up. But in any case, royal marriage with Castile, definitely worth having because France is going to be our enemy. Historically, they allied the Ottomans. And it's important to understand that as Austria, as a Holy Roman Emperor, I wasn't going to click on that yet, I was going to click on the map. The Ottomans are our primary enemy. Historically, they are the Caliph. They are the primary representative of the Muslim world. We are the Holy Roman Emperor. We are the primary representative of the Christian world. We are enemies in a big way. France may well ally them, so we need Castile. We absolutely need Castile and later Spain. I've probably belaboured that too much. Okay, so this is the Holy Roman Empire. One thing that I do want to point out, which is going to be important, and the reason why Poland and Burgundy make uncomfortable allies for us, is that they own some lands which belong to the Empire. And yet they're not part of the Empire themselves. So that's why these lands are coloured in striped. They're a problem for us. That actually causes us an issue. So Denmark as well, actually. Which is why in some ways we're naturally enemies with them. I think I had a game where I allied Poland and they ended up holding on to these lands throughout the game and they were a constant thorn in my side. But they were just too valuable as an ally to give up. I've also had another game where I allied Poland, had a royal marriage and got them for free early on, which was fantastic. So that's not happening this game, but yeah, luck of a draw, I'm afraid. Okay, we will look at the actual Emperor screen. So there's an Emperor screen down here. There's also a Papacy screen, which we'll look at next time, I think. Holy Roman Empire screen. This is where we have to explain it all, which is, yeah, it's going to be fun. So up here there is us, there is the Emperor. It's not an empire as you would normally see it though, because the Emperor is actually elected. So you're Emperor for life, but whenever the Emperor dies, the new Emperor is actually elected. This is one of the things that led to, I think, Voltaire's famous quote, the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor an empire nor Roman. Which is accurate. I mean, I think by his time they'd lost the Italian states. We're going to try to keep them, as many as we can. But yeah, so not very Roman, definitely more German than Roman. Most of our states are German-speaking Germanic countries, which is why it ended up more or less becoming what we now know as Germany. So there are 7 electors in the Holy Roman Empire. These can change, but they don't change easily. They are, inherited So most of the time, the electors will stay the electors. So we need these people, or at least a majority of these people, to vote for us. When Friedrich dies, Ladislaus, who's currently heir, assuming he survives, he will take over Austria, naturally. In theory, he has a claim to Bohemia and Hungary. But whether he becomes a Holy Roman Empire depends entirely on the 7 princes. We refer to them as princes, whatever kind of government they've got. So, Bohemia, Brandenburg, Cologne, Mainz, which I'm never confident of the pronunciation of, the Palatinate, Saxony, and Trier. We absolutely need the majority of these people to vote for us. At the moment, they're all voting for us. You can see down there that they've got us as their current preferred person, which is great. We would love to keep it that way. We won't be able to. But this is one reason why diplomacy is so important. We need... I mean, I would say that you want at least 3 people at all times to be voting for you, because as long as the others don't all vote for one person, we will still win. But yeah, I think we're realistically going to ally 2 of them. Not Bohemia. We have a claim on Bohemia. We do not want to ally them. If you declare war on an ally, you will get a bunch of penalties, because it's just not something you do. Because we're probably going to end up having to declare war on Bohemia to assert our right to rule them. We don't want an alliance. I'm not going to bother with a royal marriage. It's probably going to come to war. So we're generally going to want one of the large countries. So if we look at the map again, you can see that the princes are outlined in, is that orange or brown? So you can see them relatively easily here. So in terms of size, Bohemia is probably one of the bigger ones, but as I've said, we're not going to ally them. So our best choice for larger, powerful ones will probably be Brandenburg as a favourite, or Saxony as a second favourite. Let's look at Brandenburg. Okay, Brandenburg is up for it. So I would say let's marry them. We can't ally them yet, because you can't ally 2 people on the same day. So until the clock's moving, we're not in a position to offer another alliance. But if we offer a royal marriage, it's clear that we're moving towards being friends with Brandenburg. So I would say let's royal marry Brandenburg. Now this is quite handy. Friedrich has actually literally married someone from the Brandenburgian royal family. I'm hoping that will give us a chance at maybe ending up with a Habsburg on their throne. They're currently ruled by the Hohenzollerns. But yeah, that is a good thing. It's probably why your largest allies should be the first people you offer royal marriage to, as a rule. So yeah, so that's good, but we've got a royal marriage with Brandenburg now. If we right click on ourselves, you see we're outlining red, so we can see easily where our provinces are in the empire. So yeah, we've now got 3 diplomatic relations, 2 marriages, 1 alliance. We're going to want both of these, all 3 of these, to be both alliances and marriages. So that hopefully is one of the electors in the bag. We will ally them as well. We want one of the others, not Bohemia. Now, Cologne and Mainz and maybe Trier, I think, are archbishoprics, which is important because they don't marry people. So we can't do a royal marriage with them, which means we don't have a chance at accidentally inheriting them. So I would not recommend allying them either. Now, Saxony, I think, is often an enemy of Brandenburg, so while they would be a good second option, as a rule you don't tend to want to ally people who are enemies of your allies. We probably will as Austria, but it's probably not worth it. So that leaves the Palatinate, who are down here and also over there. They do actually have marriages, so I would say we're going to go for them next. We're going to try and ally them. We can't because all of our diplomats are busy. But yeah, that is probably a good solid start. We'll basically make an alliance with Brandenburg and the Palatinate. That should give us 2 princes who will hopefully always vote for us. And we will basically try to be as friendly with the others as we possibly can, except probably Bohemia, because you can even get penalties for declaring war on someone who you're too friendly with. But the other 4 we will really suck up to as much as we can. Okay, other elements of the empire. This is important. Imperial authority. We start with 20, and we're gaining every month. The reason we need this, partly it helps us retain our authority in the empire, which legitimacy also helps with, but it's partly for these reforms. The way we're going to try and do it is, there used to be an alternative route where you basically did a more Brandenburgian thing, but what we seem to have here is we can steadily make reform after reform until the empire effectively becomes synonymous with us. Each one of these reforms will basically increase our power and our authority over the empire as a whole. And this is what we're going to try to do. So yeah, for each one generally we need 50 imperial authority. We've got 20, we need this to go up as rapidly as we can. We also need the princes to be in favour of it. So if you look down at the bottom, 36 princes in favour, 41 against. We want the majority of them to be in favour. That's going to be harder as the reforms go on. They give us the median voter, so that gives us an idea of someone who we could try to bring around to it, and they tell us why they're voting against at the moment. So it gives us some ideas as to how we could get people on board. Most of that's going to be improving diplomatic relations, but that's why we need imperial authority. So let's look at this, which tells us how to improve it. Okay, so the big one, peace internally in the empire. We are rarely going to have that. The minute we start the clock going, everyone in the empire is going to start attacking everyone else. It's frustrating. Trying to manage the empire is like herding cats. They all want to conquer each other and get their own personal power as big as possible, but that is going to come at the expense of the empire as a whole, which we are running. So we basically need to try to keep the peace as much as we can, but that's going to be very difficult. If you don't like administration, you are probably not going to like playing Austria, and you'll probably like watching this even more. But we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that helps. Whenever there's peace, our imperial authority is improved. There are currently 12 free cities in the empire. That's a maximum. So that's 12 of our princes. Actually, they're all called princes, not just the electors. I think the princes are prince electors. 12 of them are designated as free cities. I think they generally need to be republics rather than monarchies, so they're also people we can't marry. Are they the ones in blue? Yeah. So they are listed in blue on this map. Free cities. They are difficult to manage, but they make our empire more valid. So ideally we want to keep 12. There's a bunch of rules as to how you can be a free city. Generally you have to be a republic, so you don't have a standard ruler. You also have to be a one province nation. So if any of these guys conquer another province, they will automatically stop being a free city, which we don't want. So we may want to force them to give it back. Or alternatively, we can try to get someone else to agree to be a free city. There's a bunch of people who like it. One of the big reasons is I think we're meant to be especially protective of them. So it can help them survive. And also I think we're more or less barred from attacking them ourselves. So they're much harder to manage. We basically have to manage them diplomatically. We can't strong arm the free cities. So yeah, but we do want to have them. 59 princes. So these are our regular princes. Yeah, so they just count as member states. So the next one down is there's currently 78 member states. The more member states we have, the higher our imperial authority will be. This is why we don't like people conquering each other. There's no way we're going to keep it to 78. That's going to be impossible. We might be able to keep it at 60 if we're lucky, but the more we have, the better. We absolutely must not go below 25. Okay, so the 78 is made up of 7 electors, 12 free cities, and 59 just standard members. And there are currently 21 provinces in the empire under the control of non-member states. These are the ones with lines, and that is a disadvantage. So we really want to improve on that. So the one advantage we do have with not allying Poland, or not being able to, is that we can try and take these two back. But that's not going to be for a while. At the moment, it's going to be all we can do to... We need to build our power, basically. Because to successfully run the empire, we may be forced to attack our member states, to force them to give territory back when they take it. Later, we may have to force them to change religion to keep everyone Catholic, because that's going to be another thing that affects our authority. It's going to be a big problem keeping this high. We want it as high as possible. We want to pass as many reforms as possible. We can use imperial authority for other things other than these reforms, but at the start, because it's quite relatively easy to keep it high, we want to get as many reforms done as we possibly can. There is a caveat on that, but we'll cover that later. Okay, so hopefully that all made some kind of sense, and it gives an idea as to how badly we're going to need to play this game. If we have good relations with the member states of the empire, we will often be able to persuade them to do things without having to attack them. That will make them hate us, though. If, on the other hand, we have bad relations, we're going to have to use force a lot more. So, as Emperor, we're going to want the best diplomatic relations we can have with people, especially members of the Empire, but we're also going to need to be powerful enough to enforce our will if that doesn't work. So for that, we need Bohemia or Hungary. However, we can't control when that's going to happen. So this is the final thing we're going to look at. I'm going to move back to the regular political map. If we look at the shield, one more thing we want to look at before we start the clock, and in this case end the session, is the missions. So this is basically here to help us. It gives us an idea of how historically Austria operated and how the game expects you to play Austria. We can ignore this completely. It's an open sandbox, we don't have to follow this. But especially on your first time through, it's very helpful. It gives us an idea of what we should do. It's just a bit of advice. So okay, the first thing it suggests is secure electors. So what we want to do here is we want at least 5 electors to be backing Austria to become emperor, which we currently already have, but they also want to have at least 100 opinion of Austria. So if we look at Brandenburg, so they're our friend. I've right-clicked them, sorry, it's diplomacy screen again. These two things are very important, and I've no idea why they just changed, given that the clock's still paused. This we've got less control over, it's less important. That's our opinion of Brandenburg. This one is vital. That is their opinion of us. So we want this to be plus 100 on 5 of the electors. We can actually, I think, see their opinion of us. Oh no, that's how much they're backing us, I guess. Because Brandenburg, yeah, is not 76. Okay, so that doesn't tell us. It tells us they're backing us, but to see how much they like us, we'll just open their diplomacy screen. There's the Palatinate. So they're just plus 25. But we are going to improve that. We need that at plus 100. Our diplomats are going to be very busy, especially at the moment because we only have 3. Okay, back to the mission screen. What will actually happen? I don't think they actually tell you this is going to happen. Although you can kind of tell from the next thing in the mission tree, when we complete this mission, we will get a reason to attack Bohemia to restore our personal union over them, because I'm pretty sure there's no chance of them just honouring the personal union. So from the point we complete this mission, the clock will be ticking for us to conquer Bohemia. So even when we're able to complete this mission, we may not want to do it straight away, and that's going to be a recurring theme for these missions. You have the option as to when you actually complete them. So yeah, anyway, for that one, we want to get the electors to really like us. This one, this is quite standard for people in general, build to force limit. For Austria, that's going to be very difficult because as the Emperor, our force limit is ridiculously high, way higher than the army we can afford to pay for. However, we are going to find ways around that. So we will complete this eventually, but probably not intentionally. Trustworthy allies, we're definitely going to complete this. We just need 2 countries of an alliance that have at least 150 opinion of us. Won't be a problem. High income, again, we will complete that just by the things we do naturally. And decline of Hungary. So if you remember, at the start we were told we had a claim on Bohemia and a claim on Hungary. That's the Bohemia claim, this is the Hungary claim. When we complete this mission, I think we will have the option to get a personal union over them. We will also get that as an event. I think when the interregnum ends, if they go with a different ruler than ours, then we will automatically get a personal union claim on them. We will cover claims when we start attacking people. And we can also do it by completing this mission. So we have 2 opportunities to conquer Hungary, which is good. We should almost certainly get Hungary. The sooner the better, especially because Poland isn't our ally. Because the Ottomans, Poland may start taking chunks out of them. While that will make them easier to conquer, it will make them less valuable when we do conquer them. But yeah, we shouldn't have too many problems with getting Hungary because we have 2 opportunities. If we're incredibly lucky, and this is quite rare, they may actually just go with Ladislaus anyway. He technically is the heir to the Hungarian throne, and there's a small chance, maybe 10%, that they will just honour that and we will get them for free. We'll be very lucky for that to happen. Probably about as the same amount of luck as we've had in not being able to ally Poland. So you never know, it could happen. So yeah. And I think that covers the missions. It is worth following these because you do get benefits. Like if we complete this, we get this claim on Hungary. We complete this, we get this claim on Bohemia. And we do definitely want them. I think that probably is everything, and we're more or less ready to start the game. So I hope that all made sense. Hope it wasn't too boring. Unfortunately with Austria, it's going to be so complicated that there will be a fair bit of explanation, but it will hopefully make sense as we go along and start to actually do things. I do think it's worth learning to play as Austria. I really enjoy it because you get to play diplomatically in a way that you don't really play as anyone else. In theory, any member of a Holy Roman Empire can become the Emperor, but it does make it a lot more difficult because you have to first become the Emperor, then you have to do everything Austria's already done while dealing with all the stupid things the previous Emperor did. So starting as Austria does give you your best chance to really play the Holy Roman Empire as it's meant to be played. So yeah, we will deal with it. Also, I think Austria, just because of the Habsburgs historically, I think we have an advantage in getting personal unions over all of these countries and the ones that crop up later. So it does give us our best shot at the whole diplomatic playthrough. So I'm going to stop there. And yeah, thank you for watching. And I will see you next time for more diplomacy and more Austria. Until then, take care.